Hello, I'm Stuart Pallister, the editor of INSEAD Knowledge, and today we're talking to INSEAD Professor Randel Carlock about his new book, Family Business on the Couch. Randel, how did the book come about?
Well, we started to look at the family businesses that we worked with here at INSEAD, and Professor Manfred Ketz-de-Vries and myself started to analyze the families we'd worked with. We realized that their issues weren't necessarily business issues, but oftentimes they were the family dynamics and the individual issues. So we decided that what the field of family business really needed was a book that explored family business dynamics and really the psychology of business families.
Because this is almost a psychoanalytic approach. I mean, it does say on the couch, which is a pretty good indicator.
It's a combination. Another thing that Manfred and I wanted to do was to look at the families both from a psychodynamic and a family systemic perspective, because typically these two views of the psychology don't work very well together. And so because Manfred and I are trained in the two, we decided that would be an approach to take. But it's very much about family thinking, family behavior, family psychology.
Now, the basic premise seems to be that families are not rational actors, that there's a lot of emotional baggage there that you have to deal with.
It's true with business families, but really when we look at any place in a business school, most people aren't rational actors when it comes to their own lives, their own careers, and their own motivations. One of the things that we found as we work with executives from around the world is that their emotional makeup and how they see themselves and the world around them is probably as equally important to their business training and their business skills.
Who are you aiming for as a target audience with this particular book?
Well, obviously we want it for business families. We tried to write it so that it was technically correct and so that it has a lot of good frameworks, but we want our first audience to be business families, as well as other professors that teach family business, and then a very important group, and that's the advisors and professionals who serve family businesses. One of the things that we have found is that these people are often caught with their technical training, but really no understanding of the human dimension of their clients. So we really hope this book helps all three groups.
Well, from some of the case studies that you have in here, it seems as though you really do have to dig quite deeply into the family background, into the family skeletons.
It's a lot about the family's history, yes. I mean, families have secrets and family has reasons for doing things that outsiders will never know. One of the interesting things is when you work with families, even in an educational setting like we do here at INSEAD, is that oftentimes the minute you start a class on family business management, people will say things about the business for the first 10 or 15 minutes, and then almost without exception, most of the people in the room will start to talk about their family issues and their family dynamics, because these are the areas they struggle with. Family businesses are well-run businesses, and they face the same issues that any business faces about employees or markets or competition. What makes them unique and what causes them to stay up at night and not sleep is their family. How can we make better careers for our children? How can we have better harmony in the family?
Are most families, though, dysfunctional when it comes down to it?
Well, Stuart, I never use the word dysfunctional because very few families are dysfunctional. Dysfunctional would mean the family doesn't function. What most families have is challenges and issues, whether it's about communication or how we address conflict or even how we share time together. Families struggle because being a part of a family is very difficult. And in a family business, it's twice as hard because it's an overlap of your family and your love and your work and your career. And all of those factors are mixed in. If you don't work for your father, you'd have a lot less opportunities to have conflict with him.
If we could just briefly look at an example of a family. If it was a family-controlled business, the Bancrofts running Dow Jones. Murdoch recently took control of the Wall Street Journal and Dow Jones. What are your perceptions of the Bancroft family and how they negotiated the deal?
Well, I think that the family is a spectacular family in terms of what they stood for because they believed very strongly in the importance of journalism. From a psychological standpoint, I think that there's several things in our book that we talked about that would demonstrate why they had trouble in sustaining the Wall Street Journal as a very powerful media and company in the 21st century. The Wall Street Journal was a great brand name, and yet they let other competitors pass them by. part of it was how the family approached the business. One is the family's communication wasn't very good. They didn't network internally and talk to each other, and they had very little external interaction. And so that makes it difficult to be good stewards if you're not talking to each other or your business. I mean, some of the other things, the Bancroft family was a controlling shareholder with over 64%, and yet they didn't use that control. They didn't hold management or the business accountable. So there was another psychological factor around control. Also, there was some uncertainty around their goal alignment. The senior generation was very much about protecting the Wall Street Journal. The junior generation was thinking about market share and creating wealth and enhancing the value of the Wall Street Journal. When your asset or your stock price falls by 50%, that's a wake-up call. That should say to you there's something wrong, and a lot of the family in the Bancroft family missed it. Another piece was time frame, and we look at the psychology of time and how people manage time. The Bancroft senior generation thought they had forever. And truly they didn't have forever. The Wall Street Journal was being surpassed by many competitors like Reuters or like Bloomberg. So this was another challenge for them. And then the last one was that they really didn't have an organization structure that created the types of interactions that they needed. They completely were hands-off with management. So all 5 of these psychological factors worked against the Bancroft family, and that's why their asset lost value. That's why another family business, in the case of Murdoch, was able to acquire them.
How does the Murdoch family compare? Because he's already looking at the sort of succession issues and so on.
Well, if you look at those same factors, it's in some ways it's unfair. Murdoch is still the founding entrepreneur. Even though his father started the business, Rupert Murdoch is the entrepreneur that built it and made it into a global phenomenon. But all of those issues around control, time frame, organization, communications, Rupert Murdoch is exceptional at. Where Murdoch's going to have a challenge is when he passes it to his next generation. He'll have an issue around his wife, he'll have an issue around his children, because they're going to have to become a family unit and start to do some of these same types of things that he does as the entrepreneur. And what we find in family businesses is that the transition from the entrepreneur to the second generation and then from the second to the third generation are critical. If you can make those 2 transitions, then you've got processes in place and you have experience. But until you've done it, it's very, very difficult.
Randel, thanks. And that was Randel Carlock, INSEAD Professor, talking about his latest book, Family Business on the Couch. I'm Stuart Pallister.